Hello, I'm Brian Fox. This is my channel, I Hate Rock Music. And today I want to talk about the band AUTOSALVAGE. I don't really have any old stories to tell about them. I really kind of overlooked the album for years. I discovered it probably about 1980 or so. I kind of passed it by because, for one thing, it was on RCA. For another thing, didn't see that many copies around. I just didn't really get exposed to it, and I just kind of assumed that they were another kind of a second or third tier, possibly mediocre psychedelic band. And boy, I was really surprised when I got into their solo album. A little bit of history: the band existed from 1966 to 1968, and was Tom Donaher on guitar, Darius Davenport on drums and multi instruments, Rick Turner on guitar, and Skip Boone on bass. And Skip Boone is the brother of Steve Boone, who was in the Love and Spoonful. So they got to use the Love and Spoonful's rehearsal space, and apparently even inherited guitar pedals from the Love and Spoonful. And Tom Danaher had been involved in the Boston and New York folk scenes, and apparently had some connections with Ian and Sylvia. And I'm not sure what motivated him to move into the rock arena, but he adopted very quickly. Incredible band. His vocals are really interesting because, of course, like a lot of those bands, like the Byrds, etc., they came from a folk background. So he brings that folk sensibility to the band as far as the singing and the vocals. And there's a lot of harmonies in the record that kind of remind me of a more low rent version of the Byrds. And a little touch of psychedelia, but more of a hard rock band ultimately. And one of the things I find really peculiar about them is, uh, in some weird way, they kind of have an affinity with bands like the Mothers of Invention. And in fact, Auto Salvage opened for the Mothers of Invention at a New York club called the Balloon. I think it was called the Balloon Club. And Zappa really liked him. And Zappa uh, had them change the name from Northern Lights to Auto Salvage, which was one of their songs, which I thought was a good move because they definitely sound more like Auto Salvage than Northern Lights. And sales were pretty poor. They did a few gigs, and so they ended up. Apparently, Zappa had suggested they move to California, and all the band members weren't willing to do that, so they didn't do that. But wow, what a record! When I listened to it, first of all, it's got a lot of really interesting sound snippets and samples and stuff between songs, so the album really runs together really well. And then one thing that's you notice right off the bat is the dual guitar work is just stunning. Near telepathic interplay between the two guitars throughout, and great use of fuzz. They alternate between clean tones and fuzz tones, and the leads are really striking. And there's a lot of use of feedback. And then they managed to pack a lot of really interesting and original arrangements into these 2 and 3 minute songs. There's lots that goes on within the context of each song. Very impressive, very smart choices, really fantastic, imaginative arrangements that really utilize the two guitar approach really well. And they also integrate a lot of other instrumentation really well. There's a horn, so-called horn section on one tune, and it's integrated into the music so well you hardly even notice that they're horns per se. And then there's some interesting organ swells, and there's one song that has a string section. And once again, it's not like a rock song backed by a string section. They really integrate it into the sound of the band, where you're not completely aware that uh, it's a string section. But they also had really interesting, smart, quirky song titles, like a burglar song, um, The Great Brain Robbery, Land of Their Dreams, Ancestral Wants. And they released a single called Rampant Generalities. What a great song title. What a really interesting song title. That was released as a single, and it really summarizes what's so great about the band. It's got a real Birds feel. There's a lot of jangly guitar in it, but then it's juxtaposed with the really interesting arrangement that really goes through a lot of really cool changes. And then one of the guitar parts is very reminiscent of something George Harrison would do. And so a great choice for a single. But boy, when you get through the whole album, there's moments where, like I say, it's more of a psychedelic, more acidic version of the Byrds with the folk sensibility and the jangly guitars. But the dual guitar work is just stunning. It kind of reminds me of bands 10 or so years later, like Television, where the telepathy between the guitar parts and just the fact that they imagined and wrote these interesting guitar parts and interplay makes them really striking. In fact, when I hear the whole album, a lot of times I could imagine it being recorded in 1980 by an alternative rock band. It's really timeless and just has a lot of forward-looking elements to it. And so anyway, one album, and the fact that it came out in 1968 is even more striking. I guess the members of the band said that RCA thought they were getting some kind of Jefferson Airplane from New York or something like that. And really bears not much affinity to Jefferson Airplane per se, although instrumentally, I think there could be some comparisons with them and Jefferson Airplane with the guitar interplay and the interesting arrangements and the psychedelic aspects of it and the great lead work. But wow, for an album that came out in 1968, it's really timeless, and over the years has become one of my favorite rock albums of all time. I would have to put it at least in the top 100. And I dare you to get the Auto Salvage record and listen to it 3 times and not have it be one of your favorites. It really gets under your skin. So there we have it, Auto Salvage. Incredible band, wonderful album. Too bad we didn't get any more from them. I'm Brian Fox. Thank you for watching I Hate Rock Music.